How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. Well, this is a great week for Headcases. Today's guest has been a Harvard and Wharton business school grad. He's been the past president of Jean-Louis David, founder of Busy Salons, creator of A-Game Mastery Coaching, and president of Salon Ninja. He is a certified high-performance coach who's worked with Frederick Fakai, Oribe, Garin, Scott Cole, Beth Minardi, and Rodney Cutler, just to name a few high profilers. And I think it's time. So let's get into this week's head case, Mr. Andrew Finkelstein. Andrew, it is an absolute pleasure on here. I was remarking in our green room beforehand how I've known of you for years, so I'm actually honored to have you on here. And I was actually listening to a couple of interviews that we were doing the other day, and it was interesting because some of your points of view are exactly the same way as my business coach is. So, and that's where I really wanted to hit on today was a little bit about the coaching that you do, etc. But first off, hey, welcome to Headcases.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I love head cases. I think I've been a head case my entire life, so I should have been on sooner. Yeah.
You know, and that's why we figured that, our business is such, it's funny. I've been involved in the business world. I've been involved in the corporate world, and I know as you have. And if I have it right, you're not a hairdresser per se, but you've been in it all your life. Is that correct?
That's correct. My family was in it. Yep.
So I know you probably more than anybody know the how hairdressers get painted as the emotional group. And I always laugh when people do that because I said, oh my God, if you've ever been involved in a corporation, they get just as emotional inside there as they do outside as well.
Absolutely. It's all the same. People are people. The hairdressers just happen to take on that label, and maybe perhaps because they are artistic. Let's hand it.
Yeah, and I think, and probably that your emotions can arise, And I want I don't know of anybody who wouldn't know you, but for the people that don't, I want to get just a little bit of your history about where you were. But what I want to do even before that, because now here you are, you're certified high performance coaches, you've been CEOs, you've been the founder of organizations, but I want to know what was Andrew like as a teenager, first off? What was it like? Which group were you in? What part of the group were you on? How did that end up leading you to where you are today?
I was a dork. And I'm not saying I'm still not one. Liked athletics, liked art, liked girls, liked life. I was a little guy. God, I was short. As a matter of fact, when I got my driver's license, I was 5'2", and one time my mom and I were driving in New York City. I had my license, and we get pulled over, and the cop, you roll the window. It was very different then. You roll the window down. He comes up you don't have to get out of your car. He comes up. He looks in. He says, "Son, could I see your license?" He said, "Do you have a license?" I said, "Yes, I do, sir." And I hand him the license, and he's looking at it. He said, I said to him, "Do you think I'd be driving with my mother?" Do you think I'd be driving my mother if I didn't have a driver's license? I know I look like 3 years old, but anyway, that was. So I was a young kid because I was in school, a grade ahead of myself. And so a combination of looking young, being short, and all that came with it. I didn't have much of a social life, let's put it that way.
It's interesting. We bear some commonality here too, because I started school when I was 4, so I was always the youngest, the smallest, the tiniest kid around, and quite insecure, and always sat back. But I'll tell you one thing, Andrew, that I learned real quickly in school was find the biggest, meanest kid in the. Everybody would say, go find the biggest, meanest kid, punch him in the mouth, and let him know your authority. I went, no. I'm going to find the biggest, not meanest, but the biggest kid who had the biggest reputation for being a scrapper, and he became my best friend.
Absolutely.
And I made sure nobody picked on me because Cliff was around. So.
I had my Cliff too.
Yeah, there you go.
Very good strategy.
Yeah,
very good strategy.
See, it's just and you don't get your knuckles dirty or anything like that. Yeah. So what? So now, you're a teenager. You're gone through life. What now was your? How did you get into the hairdressing industry?
So after I went to university, came out, and I was working for Macy's. I was a assistant buyer in the women's and half size department. I had not a clue as to what half sizes were, women's budget dresses. So I was learning things in the corporate world, and my family was in the business, but we really didn't talk about the business all the time. It was just not on my radar. And then one day I get a call, not from my dad, but from a cousin of mine who was working with my dad. And he said, hey, could you come down to the offices? Want to speak to you. We'd like you to join the company. And so I'm flattered. I said, well, I have this position. He said, yeah, come on down, let's discuss it. And I went into the offices, and we had a conversation, and I gave my 2 weeks notice, and the next thing I knew, there I was, part of the business, and started as a receptionist in a very large salon that we had in New York City, and worked virtually every position except didn't have my license, so I couldn't work as a stylist, couldn't touch hair. And that's how I got in.
So now, first of all, congrats, and I want to brag on you a little bit here because you said I'm very casual. I found that everybody that goes to Harvard or Wharton, they just say I went to university, but you went to probably the two best universities that there are out there, and that was on business, was it?
It was both business, yeah.
Yeah, and so now, how did that? See, that's where I find it really interesting, and I wish that we could, in our industry, we could have more people that were the business mind could help so much the emotional or the creative side, and particularly the hairdresser that. I find that, I'm going to give you just a little bit of history of why I understand this so well, is that when I was young and my wife and I got married and we had kids, I was making $189 a month, my rent was $90, and so I knew I didn't have any money, so I kept thinking my clients don't have any money, and I would be doing a harmful act if I asked them to buy retail. And it wasn't until I took some business classes and somebody with not only sales sense but business sense talked to me about what people's needs are. And I'd like how did that help you going into the reception business? I'm sure that must have been enlightening, going from business and then with salons into doing front desk. But then how did that help the growth of the salon? And what was the insights that you saw into our industry at that point?
Well, I think you brought it up at the beginning of this conversation about the self-conception of stylists. People go into the industry because they consider themselves to be creative people, and they are creative people, which it's great. It's great. But what happens is, what you learn in business school is to step back and look at something objectively as best you can. You break it down, basically accounting. You're looking at a translation of numbers, actions into numbers, and it's really a point of view. It's what I find extremely interesting today in the coaching work that I do is that we work with people to separate them. You're not schizophrenic if you can stand back and look at yourself and look at your life and look at your business as dispassionately as you possibly can. It's almost like a stoic point of view of looking at the world, and I find that very helpful. And I found business school helpful to a point, but what I discovered along the way is that people don't need business school. They first have to train their minds and think like a business person. But a business person, doesn't lack empathy. I think what you were describing, Chris, is, the Chris who was making $189 a week as kind of a very empathetic guy who you could relate to the customer who was making probably less than you were, and you didn't want to add on a retail sale because you were my dad told me this, don't use X-ray, you don't have X-ray eyes, don't look into other people's pocketbooks, and right. people aren't driven by the numbers. Numbers are really important. They're the emotional selves. And by the way, business school, you do learn marketing, you do learn those other things that have that emotional component designed into it. So it's not all the numbers. It's really not.
You said something there that I thought was really interesting. Is that you said look at the numbers, but then you have to be able to step back, look, and I'm assuming that look and analyze is in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how, when you're coaching people, what do you find is do you find that do they have a hard time doing that? Or is it an emotion that comes up when you're coaching them on that? And particularly, I'm sure that if you're coaching them something and they've got a problem that you're trying to help them with, what is that like? How do you as a coach deal with that emotion, or if it comes up, how do you deal with that?
Well, directly, but let me just frame what I believe coaching is. It's really a delivery process that leads to discovery. It leads to decision making, performance improvements, and then ultimately better living. So it's when a client is blocked in some way, we dig deeper. What's going on here? We're not pounding the numbers into them. They're working it through. They have to come to a point where they have to make a decision about, okay, I'm going to stand back. I see how I'm getting in my own way, because you have to get out of your own way to progress, don't you? If you're always the roadblock, which so many owners are. It's not the team, it's not the customers, it's their thinking. It's the thinking process. So we really coach on a thinking process more than, teaching something specific, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, and you kind of, this is one thing that I think our viewers and our listeners often get confused with, and maybe if you could help shed some light on this, is that the difference between teaching someone something, coaching them something, coaching somebody on whatever that is, and then being a mentor to them. So if you had to put those in three words, coaching, teaching, mentoring, could you shed some light on, just to give some clarity to the listener and viewer so that they understand from a perspective what each one of those means to you.
Well, the coaching that I do has a lot to do with habit formation. Okay, and I am a high performance coach, and there are 6 key habits that we teach. One is, seeking clarity, let's say. So we just talked about numbers show a lot of clarity, don't they? But seeking personal clarity. Another is generating energy, and then raising the necessity, meaning you got to succeed. And so I question people, what's that level of necessity? We discover it. And then there are the social parts of habits, like increasing your own productivity, developing your influence, and then you demonstrate courage. So that's the bucket. That's what we work on in coaching. Okay, teaching is really, there's a topic, and there's a presentation, and you work with someone to check their knowledge, and take them through, help them break it down so that they discover the thing itself. Mentoring is really asking a bunch of questions and giving some advice, so to speak. Coaching, in when I coach, I'm not giving advice. That's the whole thing, because I believe that people have the answers. They just haven't formulated it in their minds, and they have some blockages which prevent them from coming to get to determine what the answers are. A lot of it has to do in coaching with helping someone boost their confidence. And the way you boost someone's confidence, and I can't boost your confidence, but I can engage with you in a conversation, and here's where a little teaching comes in. So you become more competent in something, and there's what we call a competence loop. The more you're competent with something, you feel competent, the more confidence you gain. The more confidence you gain, then the more you're apt to try something new, discover, and that's where courage comes in, et cetera. So it's a mix of things. But can you be all things to one person? Yes, you can be. Yes, you can.
Nice.
You just need to know which hats to wear when.
Yeah. So is it the in the coaching processes that you do? Is it? I've often heard that some people have say when some coaches come in, what they've got to do is they don't know they may know how to get you there, but they don't know what your background, what your information is, et cetera. So they have to ask more fact-finding stuff first, and then they might not even know, in order to get you to the answer of what you need as the coachee. I don't even know if that's a word, but we'll call that a word for now. But is it that you have to ask them questions to help them to get clarity on what it is, as opposed to some people would just give you opinion?
Yeah. Before we even enter a process, they have looked at we have a bunch of questions, so they have looked at their own clarity. Okay, they've graded themselves. We give them something. So what I have from someone is, okay, if this is how we define clarity, you're looking at the world through, on a scale of 1 to 10, you're grading yourself as an 8. Okay, I know you're fairly clear, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So we go into the relationship with that in mind. The other stuff, all the stuff I look at as kind of a story, a narrative. If they want to fix their business, we got to work on ourselves first, and then so that we're capable of working on the business. Because I can come in truly, and as a consultant, because I've run enough, I've owned enough, that in quick time I can tell you this is off base. Look at your pay plan. This is maybe interfering with the performance. It's not in sync. Your marketing, all the stuff. But then what can you do with it?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes people won't, if you just tell them here's what you need to do, the filters that they've got might throw up a block where they'll just either pacify it till it's gone and then they go back to their old habits.
Absolutely. So I
want to go back to your habits.
Sure,
when you
please.
talk about the habits that have, I find that so intriguing. Tell us a little bit more about when you say the habits. I'm assuming that you're looking for the habits they have in personal business or whatever, and then you're trying to find out one that either isn't working. What are you looking for there?
I'm not looking for anything, so to speak. What I'm looking for is with them. We're looking at these habits and how they're displayed. And then we go through exercises that they discover, where they can improve. Uh-huh. And they do stuff. And what's working, what's not working. So,
give me an example of a habit. When you say a habit, just for the listeners, so that they...
Sure. Okay, so if you're not feeling productive...
Got it.
Step back for a second. How are you planning? How are you planning your day?
Right.
How are you planning? This is something that so intrigued me about owners in the business versus stylists in the business, because stylists are used to, hopefully, planning a book.
Right.
An owner has to plan a business. So technically, they know the moves to make, but you have to plan as an owner. Let's say you have to plan every day. Every day you have to plan every hour, and that doesn't mean every hour has to be productive. You need rest in between. All that good stuff, which is something that we do, because you need to have habits so that you can be energetic. How many owners? I mean, it's a hard business, Chris.
Yeah.
It's not a simple business. It's not a high margin business. It's dealing with, when you talked about emotions, you're dealing with people all the time. People are customers. People are team members. We're not stamping out widgets. This is very different. So, one of my mentors, the great Michael Gerber, right
from eMyth.
From eMyth, and I worked with Michael. I was a senior coach with Michael, and Michael talked about management, and he would say, managing people, we can barely manage ourselves. You think you can manage people? So really what he was saying is manage yourself first. Once you manage yourself and those things that you talked about at the beginning, the emotional component, you got to get that down. You got to get that down. And then you can step into the arena, But people are all over the place. So they don't have the right habits. Habits of showing up. And when I say showing up, it's not just on time, right? But really being your best self and knowing what that best self looks like and how you're going to interact not only with yourself, but with other people. And these are the things that we work on. And there are some tricks of the trade, like, trigger words and things like that. So when you enter a room, when you enter the salon, who is going to enter that salon?
Right.
Who's going to come to the party that day?
It's interesting what you say there, and I'm forgetting the author's name, but the name of the book was Alter Ego. And he talks in his book. He talks about
was that Todd?
That everybody.
Todd Herman.
Yes, okay. It was. It was Todd Herman. Yeah. And he says that everybody has an ego, and he says everybody has to have multiple egos. And at first, because I always, in our industry, we have this perspective that that ego is bad.
Exactly.
And it's not. That's not necessarily true. Ego is the persona that you have to have when you're in a situation. And I loved what he said when he said, "Listen, if I'm with," and this was his words, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "If I'm with my daughter playing tea time, I have to have a different persona and a different," because he puts his persona as a character. This is the character that I have to be. I have to be a different character when I'm with my daughter at tea time than when I am going in to do a presentation in front of a Fortune 500 company.
Absolutely.
Is that what you mean when you're talking about triggers?
Yes, in a way, yes. I mean, when you're literally, we used to have something. One of our general managers had above the door of the salon. He had, you're entering it. You're a star, and you're, just take that idea on. I don't agree or disagree, but it's who you want to be, the kind of qualities that you want to exhibit when you enter that business. And I have mine, how I want it. I have my interaction words, how I want to show up, be with people. It's very much who was the guy? Anyway, talk about being and becoming. I mean, it's you. We're continually, we have to be to become. Okay, if we want to become great in our work, in our marriages, in our relationships, we have to be that. Okay, we have to be great. And you'll find when you define what that is, little by little, you become great. And
it's interesting. I was we were talking the other day, and I can't remember where this came up, but we were talking about that it's sometimes who you are and who you hang around with is who you will become, rather than. And here was the example that this person gave us. He said that if you want to be a millionaire, then make sure you have at least 5 millionaires that are your friends and hanging around with. And if you're hanging around with 5 people that are millionaires, you'll become the 6th. If you want to become a better father, hang around with 5 fathers that are incredible fathers, and you'll become the 6th.
That's
because
true.
You do that. And I'm trying to think of that from what you said in a kind of a reverse engineer, that if you go into your salon, your business, of who you want me to be, and that if you guys have the same values, then that they'll migrate to that. Am I close to that?
That's close. That's close. And just recognizing that everyone has who they want to be. Every stylist working behind the chair has their best selves. And what happens is, so many times they have this really misconception of who they believe they have to be.
Interesting.
When they're there.
Yeah.
And when you're, people leave great businesses because the owner and the stylist, they don't get one another.
Right.
They just don't get one another. They think the owner's trying to force something onto them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When that's most owners want their stylist to be great.
Yeah.
I've never met one who hasn't. They just don't know how to bring out the greatness in them.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting. I was talking to a school owner the other day, and they were talking about retail sales.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that, I said, well, have you ever tried just doing XYZ with a promotion? And they said, oh, no, you can't do that. I said, well, why can't you do that? And he said, well, it's because the people that we have as students think that as the owner, because they know they're not getting any money from it. They think that all you're doing for that is so you can line your pocket with more money. So he said, I have to change the way that I am about it. And he just gave the whole thing a different twist, which was made it about them. And I found that very interesting, because then it was the same thing, but they didn't think he was trying to take money from them and put it in his in that person's pocket. Mm-hmm. It was interesting.
Very interesting. Very interesting. People, people have such misconceptions, and we don't know really how to engage with people.
Yeah.
And there's the fear factor. In a school is a little bit different, I would say, than the salon. But the fear factor runs high of losing. Right? I mean, where's the emphasis? I don't want to lose, so I don't want to show up. I don't want to be bold. I don't want to be confident with showing up with the stylist. I don't want to tell them the truth. So we live in little lies because we don't know how to present things in a way that's going to help someone grow.
Yeah, is that part of the process that you go through with them and hopefully on to the stylist, that how to deal with those little lies?
Yeah, once you learn how to deal with it yourself, you discover how you can deal with it with other people. We teach influence, how you go about influencing someone's behavior, how you persuade them to do something. Yes, very, very much so. But again, going back to your, the original thing about looking at business, we look at influence and persuasion in the same way. You could step back, and there's a step-by-step process that we use that helps people influence other people's decision.
Yeah. Interesting. It's interesting that I'm thinking, I'm still picturing this image where I see Andrew at the front desk, and then and now I see him as this coach, and I find that in our lives, somebody said to me the other day, and I keep forgetting the word that they use. They said, well, they wanted me to do a class on. What do they call it when you said you're always ever changing, you're always doing something different?
Evolution, evolving.
Yeah, well, that was the word I give it. I'm like you. I said I didn't just. I've forgotten the word. When you're jumping from one thing to the next, you're never letting that one thing be you for the rest of life. And I said I just evolved into what I've been from one stage to the other, because that's where my interests went.
Correct.
And that's what intrigued me, so that I feel that I'm doing something good during, while I'm in this thing called work. And I see there's always a little catalyst that's in there, something that shifted it for you. For instance, like if you move from employer to employee to an entrepreneur, or a successful individual to a coach, or, if you're a hairdresser and you're moving from becoming a colorist, and then you get intrigued, and now you're just going to become a successful designer who does color. What was the linchpin for you? Where did it happen that you were in business? And I know that you were with, let's face it, when you were the CEO of Jean-Louis David, and now you're in charge of all these sessions. I want to talk a little bit more about, about Glenby's later. But what happened? Where did you go? OMG, you know what? I'm coaching or helping all these people within my organizations. How do I help other people as well? How did that all happen?
That all happened slowly, and then all of a sudden. It happened. The coaching thing, I'd been coaching all along. We had, we can talk about Glenby's later, but at Glenby's we had something called Glenby Leadership Skills, which was really a coaching process. The great thing about Glenby was we were so ahead of our time. I mean, we were doing these things 30 years ago, stuff that's just people are just catching on to now. But when was the real moment recently? Maybe it was 5 years ago. I had a moment, and it had nothing to do with business. It was totally personal. It had to do with wanting to make a different kind of impact, an impact on people's lives through the business. So as a coach, I can really make significant impact on individuals and lives, and they can live and get other people to leverage that through their own being and through their own coaching onto others. And that came 5 years ago, actually, when my son's wife gave birth to what is now my granddaughter. And
Congrats.
Yeah, I mean, sweetest girl in the world. But at that moment, I don't know what it was. I can't explain. I just said, Andrew, I know there's more to doing what you've been doing, and this is really about life itself. And I want to learn a new way of doing what I do. I don't know if that answers the question, because I think I was more of a I was a consultant. I ran organizations. Now I let people run their organizations. I'm not consulting with them, but I'm really working with them so that they can be the best business owner that they can possibly be.
Got it. So did someone come to you first and say, hey, I need help? Or did you seek out and said, hey, I want to help other people, so I'm just going to put my shingle out there?
Well, no,
how did that go?
People were always coming to me that they needed help. And it was a pleasure as a consultant to help them, which I did. And we did some great work together. They did great work. And I guess that's where a little bit of the mentoring that you talked about came in. But what I noticed, and you said before, if people don't incorporate this, I can give them the greatest system in the world. I have some great systems, truly great systems, and there are many out there that exist. Other people have, but if someone doesn't embrace it, if someone doesn't make it come alive for themselves, it'll never come alive for the organization. And I just saw that piece, how the owner, how the CEO of the company makes the company come alive. That's all I can say, because this is an aliveness game. And you've been in salons, you walk in and wow, the place is a winner. People are doing great work. It's that feeling of aliveness which has always intrigued me with the business. I mean, from the time I entered it, behind that desk, oh my God, it's a burst of energy, and I just wanted people to discover all the great things that they had, in spite of all the hardships that we all go through, that they can come out on the other end and achieve their dreams.
This episode is sponsored by the Salon Associate Accelerator from trainersplaybook.com. Are you struggling with the time and cost of associate training? Do you feel like your salon is running you? We'll get your associates on the floor, all with 90% less time from you, so you can get back to building your business. Get them world-class design, finishing, color, and client care skills they'll use every day for the rest of their career, while you focus on realizing your vision. Go to trainersplaybook.com and get the Salon Associate Accelerator. And now, back to the show. Yeah, you said a magic word there. and that was the word discover. I use the word coach in my name. I call myself Coach Chris Baran, but that's more because I'm an educator and I help people. I want people to discover things that they come to us for training. And I know you're very different in that way, where you're high performance coaching, so you're coaching business and people to be better at what they do and so on. Not my wheelhouse. But one thing I've learned as an educator is when you help somebody to discover something as opposed to telling them something, that's the difference to me. And I know I'm stealing other people's lines here. I don't remember who said it, but there's the difference between motivation and inspiration. And I think that's what you do, is you inspire people to discover what the need is that they have to do so that they can move forward. Because I think, at least I've been told, and I've been told so many times, maybe I believe it, is that motivation is short-lived, but inspiration is longer, is much longer. And that's where you change somebody's mind to do something. And that's kind of what I heard in what you said there, is when you can ask people that will ask you how, what, when, all of those questions that will make you discover what you do. And that's when, I don't know if it's this expression, I'm Canadian by heritage, so we always call them 2x4s. I don't know if they call them those pieces of wood the same.
2x4s, yes.
2x4s,
absolutely.
okay. But I think we always have those blinding flashes of the obvious when, like, somebody had grabbed a 2x4 and smacked you between the eyes, metaphorically, and you went, OMG, there it is. And it's just this thing that hits you. And I'm getting more and more of that's exactly what you do when you go in to see people, and by asking the questions you ask.
Yeah. And it's also, getting people to challenge themselves. I challenge them. Look, Chris, what do I get paid for? I get paid to push.
Yeah.
That's what I get paid for.
Yeah.
Period.
Tell people, when you say push, what to the listener and viewer, what does that mean?
Push means to be really to bring out, help them see the best in themselves and to become the best in themselves. And it's more than, encouragement and cheerleading. It's really through the question that we get there. And when they see themselves and they're not fearful of what they're seeing, they can make a move. And then through the habits that they form by making the move, that becomes a snowball effect. And they become indomitable. I mean, unstoppable.
Yeah.
It's incredible what people can achieve. Incredible.
It's interesting because I want to throw this other thing on, just even for an added layer of the onion to know even more about push. When you say push or push back, I'll never forget one of the first times with me working within a corporate environment, and being a hairdresser, is that there was a push and then what we called push back. In other words, you would push back is, I say something, I'm going to push back. And in corporate life, if you do something, people will push back just to see if you will respond, to fight for what you believe in.
Sure.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not saying I believe in it or don't. But there is that side. And I learned very quickly that when you know that, it's not right to call it a game, but let's just call it for this purpose, that if I say something and you push back, that if I believe in it, I better push back again. Otherwise, I'm not standing up for what my decision is. So tell us the difference when you're talking about the push and encourage. Do you employ that technique, or do you find that you get that pushback when you suggest something?
Well, no, I don't. Because the suggestion comes in a certain context of, it's not really, they discover it. I mean, you know, I'll put something out there. It's never the answer.
Right.
It's the vessel that we're working on, and they're pouring the stuff in, not me. So you know, what I have to be, as you were being when you went to that corporate thing, is you had to be courageous. That's, you know, demonstrate. That's part of a, that's a habit. That's a high performance habit. That's what high performers do. They don't get pushed around to the point. You know, it's not like I'm going to lose the account. I mean, if you're doing the right thing, you're not going to compromise yourself and your integrity for you know, another person's sake. That's just not. If you do, you've lost the game.
Yeah.
You really have. You're not being your best self.
Yeah. How do you deal with, like, I know so many people in our industry that their little voice, the thing that they have in their brain, that they don't have as high a view of themselves as other people see them, and that holds their courage back.
Absolutely.
That how, you know, when you see that in that person, what's the processes that you use to help to bolster that courage, to help them to get back?
Oh, I won't say that it's an involved process, but there's a bunch of questions that I would ask. Tell me a time where you felt whattever it is.
Yeah.
And then we dig into it. So what was going on there? And by the way, I'm not a shrink or anything. That's not.
No.
We don't go. And I think shrinks are great, but that's a different.
That's their job, not ours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But so tell me about a time when you felt that you weren't stepping up to the plate there, when there was more that you had to say, or that you compromised yourself. What did it feel like? You know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What could you have, knowing what you know today? How would you do it now? What tactic would you take, et cetera? So we do some role playing on that.
Yeah, that's great, because the thing that's helped, at least I'm just speaking more from a personal objective, is that personal opinion, is that I know that being an A-type, and I always ended up focusing on the failures that I had as opposed to the wins that I had, until I had someone that helped me along and there was a simple process they used with me, and said, what happened after that? Mm-hmm. And they just said, and what happened after that? Yeah. And what happened after that? And then I finally went, well, you know, and after that it was okay. And I learned, and it's become my motto. I've said it on many of these already. My motto in life now, where I used to fear it, I used to run away from failure, I hated failure, and I can't say I get up in the morning and I have a little stretch cup of coffee and go, can't wait to fail today. But my motto in life now is fail your way to the top, because that's just what we do. And what I love that you're saying is how you help people. You give them examples where they know that this, when you did this, you did it right. You were there. That was courage. Identify with that and use that as a trigger. I love that, because then they get that feeling of what winning has. And I think in society right now, and I may just blurt out something that you may not agree with, but I just think that now in our society, we run this place, this thing where it's more about the failures you've done, when we know you have to go through that to get to the winning side. And I think people focus way too much on what people have done wrong. And I think that's affected some of our society.
No, it's affected the society a lot. I agree with you, and it's affected our business a lot.
Yeah,
We're coming out of 3 years, 4 years of whatever it was, a pandemic years, and there's been a shift in mentality. When just quickly, because when we went into the pandemic, okay,
Yeah.
everyone is, stage one, phase one of the pandemic was, oh my God, we got to protect the world as it is, and we were looking at safety and security and certainty and understanding, right? That was the beginning. And so we all gravitated, when I say we all, society gravitated to that. And then the second was, phase two, dealing with the crisis itself. And in dealing with the crisis itself, how did we express that? Through something called wellness, basically.
Yeah.
Now, phase three, moving out of it, what's happened with all that stuff, with going internal and the wellness and the pampering. And I don't say that pejoratively. I don't say that,
No.
putting anyone down. But now, what's come out of it is, oh my God, people are doing the bare minimum. That's the mantra, to do the bare minimum to what you need to do. That's all, the bare minimum. So you see that being expressed all over the place. I'll do enough to get by. When what's really happening is companies, everyone's looking for, there's a demand right now for a new level, because we're dealing with a change world. Today we got to go the extra mile, don't we?
Right.
Don't we? So how do you do that if you don't have that mindset of, okay, so I tripped up, so what? Let's move forward. New day, let's go. Then that's where people like you and me come in, to encourage people to step into a new world bravely, with a lot of courage, with they have to develop their energy. They really need clarity. And those people who do are going to be the winners. And unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot of winners, because that takes something that we've all become not used to, which is called WORK, work. Whether it's self-improvement or business improvement, we got to go to work on ourselves first, right?
I know from the viewers watching right now that you would never pull this out looking at me, how handsome and young and youthful and vibrant how young my hair color is. But I remember years back, and the metaphor is not the same, but the results are. And we had a period in the 80s where we had salons that were just getting by. Mm-hmm. And there was high-end salons, and there was low-end salons, and then there was middle salons. Mm-hmm. And the high-end salons and the middle salons were running at the same level. In other words, the middle salons were trying to do the same work, capture the same market share that the high-end salons were. The low-end salons were saying, look, I'm the little guy down here. And what happened, as you well know, you were there, the high-end salons and the low-end salons made out like bandits, and the middle salons went away. Now, I'm just wondering, from that parallel, if what we're talking about right now, even though it's different, it's not about high-end, low-end, middle, what we're talking about is work ethic, then I just want to get by, and for wherever those stations are. And then there's that middle ground that we seem to have that's causing this disrupt in the middle, that is a work-life balance. And that's the words that I hear all the time. I want work-life balance, which means I want this and this and this. So is it, Andrew, that keep thinking that as a business person, I want to keep my business ethic, but if the people have a different mindset, do we shift our mindset so that how do we help to accommodate as many of those people within the parameters and values that we have for our business?
Yeah, it's really.
I don't know if I'm just talking in circles here.
No, you're not. But what is work-life balance? What does that
Exactly.
What does that really mean? I mean, you can if it's not the hours. That's not it's 40 hours here and 40 hours there.
Yeah.
I mean, great. It's what you're doing with those hours, and you could work 60 hours if you want, and be supercharged, or put in a lousy 60 hours. It's how you do it, and it's really not spend an hour with someone is different than spending an hour with someone else. How are you really showing up with your family? Are you loving? Are you being a great mom, great dad? What are you doing there? What is your true role? And I go into the high performance. The habits are no different than in business.
Yeah.
You want to seek clarity. You want to have the right energy. Come on. You want to raise your necessity. You want to increase your productivity at home, so that it's not just standing behind a chair that you have productivity. Productivity is doing great things. Spending that time, making that time with your children, really productive time, really meaningful time. You want to be a great influencer to your kids. And that's not. Yeah, it matters. No one likes an absentee, mom or dad or parents. You have to be there. But this work-life balance, I just don't think people really know what they want. I don't think they're really clear. Because anyone who tells me that they don't want to make great money so that they can live a great life and have time for themselves and have time for their loved ones, I think they're smoking something.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other thing.
Which
is a whole other thing that we won't talk about.
So this podcast will be legal in some states and not in others.
That's correct.
Here's one thing I kept thinking on there is when you talk about one of the habits that they need to have is to be able to compartmentalize their week so that they have that. But then how are you taking the part that? So I'm just going to make it really simple. So I've got my calendar day is set out, and I've got this is for my family, this is for my work. But how do I make sure that I'm so effective that in that work hours that I have that day, be it 2, 3, 4, or 7. Mm-hmm. I was talking. We were doing a podcast with Daniel Mason Jones,
Sure.
and he said he has one girl that works for her, and she works for 18 hours, 18 hours a week. Mm-hmm. Was I can't remember if she said it was 8. No, I think it was 27. She worked for 9 hours a day, 3 days a week, and she makes $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Clear.
Yeah.
Because she's so effective in that, and then she still has her life balance, and she can take her time off and do all the things she wants to do. But I think that one of the best pieces of advice that our group did, our team here did, is we were having a coaching session from somebody when they were saying, okay, what's the values that you had? And we went about putting together all of our values and make sure, do we all agree that these are all the values that we have? And I think that's why the core people that we have in our organization have never left, because we all have the same value.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
But here's one thing that, Andrew, that just shook my core, that I think that your background brings to what we do. He said to me, what about abundance? Mm-hmm. And I went, what? He said, well, you don't have abundance as one of your values. And I went, well, do you mean that money? And he said, well, money is not necessarily the value, but allowing yourself, you want abundance in your life, abundance of love, abundance of spirituality, abundance in finance. and once you have your clarity on that, that is abundance is a value, that it changed my whole perspective. And no longer, from that point on, I said I would do it for free. I'm pardon my language, but I ain't doing shit for free, because well, that's not true, because I will help somebody for free. But the reality is, we have to focus on what we love, and if we know, then the money will come along.
Correct.
You can't do it for free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that girl, just going back to Daniel Mason-Jones' woman who works in the salon, she's really focused, clear. She has to be energetic. Yep. She has to be on point. She has to be highly skilled. She has to be charging a certain amount so she feels she's feeling really comfortable and confident. And she's probably very well practiced, because that doesn't come overnight. And here's, and this, or maybe we haven't really talked about it, but the people really feel that because of the social media, and they're seeing these folks pop up and the influencers, that it's easy. It's easy, and it's not. It's not. It's a struggle, but it's okay. It's okay to struggle. That's how you grow.
Yeah.
That's the challenge of life. Getting great, and terrific hairdressers, and if they'll tell you the truth, all the hours that they put in, all the work that they did, you don't see all that stuff, because that kind of sounds old-fashioned. Well, when I was young, but it's the truth. Yeah. It's I remember you mentioned Frederick Fekkai. Frederick was still is. I mean, he worked like a demon. Yeah. He worked like a demon. I can't say that Frederick's life was totally balanced and all that stuff, but to achieve what he achieved, he was on point all the time. He was very clear on what he wanted. I remember being on a plane with him. We were flying out to Michigan because he was joining our company. He was going to do some trainings and stuff. And I said, "So, Frederick, what are you looking at? What do you want to do?" He said, "I want to become the next Vidal Sassoon." Well, hey, there's room. Yeah. There's room, But to do that, you know how hard Vidal worked.
Oh, exactly.
Right? This is and there's joy in it. So work-life balance, discover the joy in your work. When you discover the joy in your work and the joy at home, you'll have work-life balance. Yeah. Because there's an abundance of both available.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail right on the head there. There's the simple word, 3-letter word, joy. Mm-hmm. What creates joy for you at home, in life, in the car? Interesting.
No, that's interesting. That's where, and bring joy to your clients. I mean, if you bring joy to them, right? Wow, what greater gift can you give to someone than that? Yeah. And what that looks like in the chairs,
Yeah, and that equates to loyalty, doesn't it?
That equates to real loyalty.
Yeah.
Real loyalty.
And Andrew, I was going, I don't know where the hell the time went on this, but I'm going to do, this is a segment we do just on rapid fire, and then I've got one more question.
Absolutely.
And I've got one more question I want to do after that. And don't let me forget, I want people to know how they can get a hold of you. But these are just rapid fires, just quick answer, quick sentences, whatever. And what turns you on in the creative process when you're getting stuff going, planning things? What turns you on?
The vision.
Yeah, I heard another word. I heard of an interview you were doing with someone, and you were talking about vision boards. And do you prescribe vision boards for people?
I do. Yeah. I do, and for business owners, I'd prescribe something called a battle board, which is your plan.
Wow, I like that. Okay, in general, in life, what do you dislike the most?
Bullshit.
What do you love the most?
My wife.
Boy, good words. Proudest moment of your life. I think I'm going to write down what I think. Hold on just a minute. Okay. Proudest moment of your life.
My son's having a child.
There. I wrote down granddaughter right there. What do you hate most about our industry?
The stupidity.
Person you admire the most?
Wow. My dad.
Person you wish you could meet?
Nelson Mandela.
Something people don't know about you?
That I'm a pretty good photographer.
Oh, hello. Month off. Where would you go? What would you do?
Japan.
What would you do?
What would I do? I'd go to the tea houses of Japan.
They're beautiful.
Have you been?
Yes, I have. I went through one of the ceremonies. It was absolutely breathtaking. Something that terrifies you.
There's art. What's happening with our country?
Favorite curse word?
I've used it before. Bullshit.
Yeah. Favorite comfort food?
Pasta.
Something in the industry you haven't done but you would love to?
Speak it into coiffure.
Okay, one do-over in your life. If something, anywhere, history, family, life in general, if you had one thing you could do over, what would it be?
Have a conversation with my dad about my brothers coming into the business.
Tomorrow, you couldn't do anything that was involved with the hair industry. What would you do?
I'd coach another industry.
There you go. Okay, last question. If you had one wish for our industry, what would it be?
If I had one wish for our industry, just to realize, just to show up each day knowing how important you are in the lives of other people.
Wow. Andrew, that was great. Thank you. If people want to get a hold of you, if they want some coaching, they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Best way is to send me an email, andrew@andrewfinkelstein.com.
Okay, good. And we'll have that up on there as well. And Finkelstein is EI, right?
EIN, yes.
EIN. Okay, good. Andrew, I can't thank you enough. It has been an absolute pleasure. I feel I have a new kindred spirit in the industry. And you're out of Miami, right?
Yeah.
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 Well, next time I'm down there, I mean, we're both in heat factors. You just have the humidity.
You better.
Next
you
time we're
better
out
believe
together,
it.
yeah. Next time we're out together, we're gonna have dinner together.
Absolutely.
I'll buy.
Absolutely. And if I come up your way,
Yeah.
I'll buy.
If you're ever in Phoenix.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good place, by the way, Chris. It's great.
Oh, I love it. I love it here.
It's a great place. Yeah.
Yeah. Andrew, thank you so much
you,
on
Chris.
behalf of our viewers and listeners for all of your knowledge, for giving up of your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.